Northwest Airlines stewardesses in the mid-1900s were treated unfairly. After a lot of lawsuits in which stewardesses took a stand for their rights, they were finally treated fairly and equally. Delta Airlines that we know today used to be Northwest Airlines, based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. To become a stewardess, a female flight attendant, in the 1930s through the 1970s, you had a lot of restrictions. First of all, girls couldn't be married, but men could. If you were a woman and they found out you were married, you were fired. But if you were a man and they found out you were married, you didn't get fired. Stewardesses had to retire by age 32, and stewards, men, could retire by age 60. Stewardesses had weight checks every Saturday, and if you gained weight, you got punished. The stewardesses got taken off flights or maybe put on less appealing flights, or they got fired. If you were a stewardess, you had to be between 5'1" and 5'9", and between 105 and 135 pounds. Stewardesses couldn't wear glasses, and the airlines didn't allow non-white women. You got paid less than the men. You had to have a high school diploma. You had to be trained how to walk and talk in stewardess shoes, and your hair had to be cut above the collar with no dye, and it was styled to look perfect underneath the uniform hats. Stewardesses got fed up with having to follow the unfair rules. 8 stewardesses had a press conference charging the airline's policy of making them retire at age 32. Barbara Dusty Rhodes asked, "Do I look like an old bag?" Their protest caught media attention and it blew up with no's. Colleen Boland, along with a couple other stewardesses, went to the House of Representatives and charged several airlines for making stewardesses retire at age 32. The more the stewardesses tried to take a stand, the more the airlines used money and politics to stall the change. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act forbids employers to discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, or sex. When President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act into law on July 2, 1964, he said this:
"Our generation of Americans has been called on to continue the unending search for justice within our own borders. We believe that all men are created equal, yet many are denied equal treatment."
He went on to say, "We believe that all men have certain unalienable rights, yet many Americans do not enjoy those rights. We believe that all men are entitled to the blessings of liberty, yet millions are being deprived of those blessings. But it cannot continue. Our Constitution, the foundation of our republic, forbids it. The principles of our freedom forbid it. Morality forbids it. And the law I will sign tonight forbids it." The bill created the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, to make sure the employers were following the new law. African Americans forced the airlines to accept racial intermixing by the 1960s. Judith Evanson filed the first complaint with the EEOC in October 1965 because she was fired for being married. She said that it violated Title VII because the men could be married. The EEOC agreed. They also saw that the company employed men in higher paid positions. Evanson sued Northwest Airlines in January 1966. She received a settlement from Northwest. Her suit led to an even bigger investigation of the airlines. The Bona Fide Occupational Qualification, the BFOQ, of the Civil Rights Act says that discrimination is allowed if there is a logical reason. Like in a commercial for wedding dresses, they can say they want to hire women from age 28 to 32, but the airlines argued that being a stewardess was the same thing. They said, quote, "Men can carry trays and hang up coats and assist in the rare event of an emergency. They cannot convey the charm, the tact, the grace, the liveliness that young girls can, particularly to men, who comprise the vast majority of airline passengers. Men cannot create for the passenger the psychological impression of a memorable occasion, add to the pleasure of the trip, the loveliness of the environment, or the ego of the male passenger." End quote. Northwest Airlines and a lot of other airlines spent millions of dollars on hiring and training young, pretty single women so they could entertain and serve passengers, while the men worked on all of the other manual work. They thought that if you hired and trained young, pretty single women, that it was the key to a successful business. They said that if you hired girls, it was the best for everyone. They argued, quote, "as an acceptable and useful job for young girls, as a training ground for future wives and mothers, as a stepping stone from school to a lifetime career, as a happy assistance to innumerable passengers, the Stewardess Corps serves an important social purpose and is universally recognized throughout the nation as being a very good thing." End quote. However, on November 9, 1966, the EEOC decided that age restrictions and marriage bans violated Title VII and that sex was not a bona fide occupational qualification. They ruled that the only restrictions an airline could make for being a flight attendant is that they have to be 21 or older and they have to have a high school diploma. But the stewardesses had to keep fighting a very long battle. For over 40 years, they went to Capitol Hill, to the House of Representatives and the Senate, and tried to convince the EEOC that the airlines were treating them unfairly. They fought the airlines in court through many different lawsuits and tried to get them to follow the law of the Civil Rights Act, and eventually they won. The airlines stopped requiring weight checks, they stopped having such strict appearance guidelines, and they finally started hiring non-white flight attendants. And now, men and women flight attendants are treated equally and fairly. This story amazed me with how hard it was to be a flight attendant in the 1960s, but it also shocked me to find out how many restrictions the women had in comparison to the men, and how unfair that was. I was inspired that the stewardesses stood up for themselves, fought, and won.